Hello! How are you doing? First things first, let's make sure that you can hear everything. Can you hear everything? Can you hear everything okay? Okay, as you can see, I've got a little bit of a different setup. So I've moved everything around. So I've got a wall behind me rather than a door. And I'm going to be getting something to cover all this up because I've got a window over there. I've got light coming through above me. So just as I do with the other room where I've got the where I do all the filming for the lessons, I'm going to put one over this so that I can isolate it, and then we'll have it nice and dark so I can actually light it separate. Got one of those nice little Edison bulbs over there, which doesn't look like anything at the moment because it's so light in here. And then I'm going to decorate it a little bit. But because, like I said, I'm going to start doing more live streams. So I'm going to start doing them pretty much every week, and it's a little bit better now because I used to do them all the time. I used to do live streams every week, but back when I used to do them every week, because live streams don't get as many views as the average lesson, it meant that the channel kind of got a little bit messed up in terms of the the algorithm and everything. So it kind of punished you back in those days because if it sees that you're only getting back in those days, I'd probably get about 80 to 200 people watching a live stream. It just sees that it's not important and, etc. So now they've changed it so that it doesn't really affect the channel in the same way. So I'm kind of free to do more live streams. So I'm going to get things nicely decorated and set up so that it's going to look a little bit nicer. And hopefully you'll get a little bit of more of a community working in the live stream, because we had a pretty nice little setup before. Everybody turned up every week. So I'm going to do a little bit of a what would you call it? It's not exactly a masterclass, is it? Just a little bit of chat about tapping, something that a lot of you probably haven't really thought that much about. If you've seen the video that I did yesterday with the riff, that how did it go? That riff that's really good for this hand. Some of you might have tried that and actually been able to get it under your fingers because it's not too tricky. So I'm going to talk a little bit about tapping today and hammer-ons in both hands, and show you how it can be quite good for technique in loads and loads of different ways. So we've got that. I'll wait until a few more people have got in here before I start. And as always, I'll delete all this part of it when I've finished, so you don't have all the waffle before. Just for anybody that's over at the TalkingBass website at any points, the spring sale finishes tomorrow. So if you're looking to get one of the courses, Chord Tone Essentials, any of the beginner courses, Groove Trainer, Technique Builder, Sight Reading, Slapping, all of that stuff, there's 25% discount off everything at the moment, and it finishes tomorrow. So that's a last minute reminder that that's all going down. So so that finishes tomorrow, and also this Wednesday I've got the interview that I did with Charles Beartu going live. So Yeah, I did an interview with... This past week, I've done interviews with Charles Beartooth and Josh Fosgreen from over at Bass Buzz. So I'm going to have both of those interviews going live. The Charles one will be on Wednesday. So any of you that are into Charles Beartooth or any of the crazy solo pieces that he does, we had a really cool chat, actually. It's about an hour and a half. So we got into everything with that. It was wicked. He's a really nice guy. He's from England. He lives in Boston now. He went to Berkeley and stayed over there. So, yeah, we got on really well. Chatted about his playing, his background, pretty much everything, his technique, all of that stuff. And so that was really cool. So that'll be going live on Wednesday. And Josh, any of you that are viewers of or a part of the Bass Buzz community, yeah, we did a really cool little... that wasn't as long. That was about 45 minutes to an hour. So I did a nice interview with Josh. Me and Josh have known each other for quite a while. We both used to work on cruise ships, and we both used to sail out of the same place in Southampton. But we never got to meet up. But he was doing his YouTube thing. I was doing my YouTube thing at the time. So we used to, we became email buddies. So Josh is really, really nice guy. So we had a nice little chat. And, yeah, that'll be going out the week after. So, Josh Fosgreen, Charles Beartooth, we've got those interviews. And the sale finishes tomorrow, 25% discount off everything. So that's all that lot out of the way. So I'll just wait for a few more people to come in. We've not got that many at the moment. We've got 66. Normally it whips up to about 100 at some point. I wonder why it's only down at 66 at the moment. But... yeah, so maybe nobody wants to learn about tapping. It's not the most popular of things. So let's see what we've got. So Will Smith. Is it the Will Smith? The writer. One of the old favourites. Did you used to have a different tag name on there? Because I always see you in there, and I know we always end up talking about boxing and MMA and all that stuff. Coincidence, I was just thinking about learning tapping better. Okay, well, we're going to be doing a bit of that. Will the recording stay available after this live finishes? Yes, it will. What kind of accent does Mark have? Doesn't sound British. What? Man, that's probably because you're a lot of non-English always think of a British accent as being very much like this, very, very posh, But no, I am from England, but I'm from up north. Me and Scott are both Divine, and Scott Whitley. If you've ever seen Scott Whitley, any of his stuff, we're all from up north. So me and Scott are from the same place, so you'll probably recognise my accent as being very like his. Yeah, it's a Yorkshire accent. Yorkshire. We talk like this up there. It's kind of like, if you've watched Game of Thrones, you know all them lot up in north, like Jon Snow? Well, that's us. That's what we sound like. Sean Bean. He's from Sheffield, which is where I was originally born. So that's the northern English. Well, I say northern. That's the Yorkshire accent. They've got different accents in Newcastle and in Alt Scousers in Liverpool and Manchester. Who you got, Garcia or Tank? Yeah. I don't know. That's a pick-em, innit? Probably Tank by knockout, but who knows? I mean, Ryan might box his way through to a decision. Does string choice impact tapping and hammer-ons? The riff from yesterday sounds really weak on flats. Oh, yeah, it'll probably sound quite weak on flats. For tapping and hammer-ons, I would say probably it's better on round wounds, but you can do them on flats. You can do it on flats. It's it doesn't make that much difference. I've got stainless steel rounds on this. This is my Fender Marcus Miller Signature Edition, and so you get more of that kind of percussive. You've got more of that. I've not got any muting on here. You can use the little mutes. I've not got that, so you might get a bit of this. a little bit of kind of rumble on it. You know, that kind of string noise. When I do the chords. I'll show you what the difference is as well. If I just tap down like that, can you hear how it's kind of almost got a chorusy sound? So, but if I do this, can you see? Because I'm muting there. So, but if, so no muting and muting. That's the difference. It's because you're getting a lot of the string rattle. Is this a place to learn about bass tapping technique? Yeah, it will be. I'm just waiting for a few people to come in. What's your favourite bass? I don't really have one. This one, it was my main gigging bass for many, many years. This one's been around the world about 6-7 times. It's very, very a good all-rounder. You can see why Marcus Miller uses it. It's got a cool... Oh, that's actually on the back pickup. It's got a good kind of slap sound. It's got a nice deep... It's a really good all-rounder. When I'm gigging with it, generally I don't have the little pickup cover because that gets in the way. I know Marcus does, but there's a lot of nice tones under there, actually. But when you've got it on, you've got to kind of either be here or here. So, you know, he uses it, and it looks better like that, but I prefer it. I prefer it without, but it just looks better like this. So I've gone back to having it like that. Okay, I'll get started. Could you educate us on all the different bass tones? They sent really nice videos on it as a beginner. It would help. Okay, I'll talk about tone a little bit later on. Strings that I'm using, these are DR high beams, stainless steel, so they're, but any old strings will do, to be honest. You know, like people get really into the brands and stuff. I do like DRs. I think they've been better lasting and they tend to be quite bright for quite a while, but I don't know. I've had all different kinds of strings. Back when... especially back in the 90s when I was, in fact, no, 2000s when I was really gigging a hell of a lot. Often I just get what I could find in music stores. I mean, it's different now with Amazon and online sales and stuff, but, you know, back then you just went into music stores and bought them. And so I just get whatever there was at medium gauge, you know. The one thing that you do have to be wary of is the gauge, because if you change the gauge, then you're going to have to change the truss rod. You have to adjust the truss rod because of the tension. Can you explain how to do the string crossing shred thing that Billy Sheehan does? I'm not sure which one you mean. Well, when he's kind of, I mean, he might do a thing where he's, you know, working across, you know, doing sweep kind of arpeggio things. He does something like that. I've never actually tried that. I guess he comes up something like that. Okay, so first things first, just in terms of the technique, I mean, there's not very much to say about tapping. I mean, it is literally just, well, let's look at both hands as well. So we'll call it tapping and hammer-ons. Hammer-ons being on this hand and tapping on this hand. But let's face it, it's all hammer-ons. We're just hammering onto the string without picking it. So instead of playing that, we could do it there, or we could do it with that hand. We just... Am I overloading? Hold on. You just don't pick. So it's anything when you're not picking. So tap in, hammer-ons, whatever. And there's not much to say about it, although I will address certain aspects of the tapping when we get onto the more of the hammer-on-y type of taps. But in terms of hammer-ons, so first of all, let's just have a look at something, an example, just of, just so you can get used to a very basic tap. Later on, we'll look at some more kind of, some hammer-on kind of things. But one of the main things that you can do that's pretty straightforward is the thing that I did yesterday where you take chords. Now, yesterday I concentrated more on the... it was more about this hand, about the left hand. But when you put them both together, the beginning bit where we had the that you're basically playing a chord. Now, a chord is a pretty simple way of playing some tapping. So let's have a look at a basic chord. Okay. So what you can do is take, let's say we take a G7. Okay. So this is going to be a G dominant 7 chord. So in terms of there, the notes there, we've got G, B, D, and F. Now, a really basic voicing for a G7 that you would get would be this. Okay? That's the root, the 7th, and the 3rd. We've missed the 5th out. So if you watch the live stream I did last week where we talked about chords, I was talking about voicing and about the notes that you can miss out of a chord. So instead of playing like a C major chord there, C, E, and G, there's that 5th. You can miss that out and actually put the root note in the top. So the 5th is always a good one to miss out. And when you play 7th chords, it's often, on bass, it's often a good idea to get rid of the 5th. So let's say a C major 7 chord would be voiced C, E, and B. Okay, now don't worry about all that. You don't have to try playing these chords yet. I'm just doing this as an example. So C, E, and B, a normal C major 7 chord would have the notes C, E, G, and B. It's a C major triad with the major 7th on the top. So there's C, E, G, and B, root, 3rd, 5th, and major 7th. Now, in terms of the voicing of that, that's quite difficult to do on a bass because you'd have to C, E, G, and you'd have to play all these things. So we want to turn it into a 3-note voicing. So to do that, we take the 5th out, which means it leaves us with root note, 3rd, and the 7th. Now, if you learn some chords like that, these little chord voicings, what you can do is as you learn them, you can actually tap them to give you a more bottom end. So if I take something like a G7, okay, so we'll just look at that chord first. That's a G at the 15th fret of the E string. I'll try and get a little bit closer. G at the 15th fret of the E string. F at the 15th fret of the D string. And then the B at the 16th fret of the G string. So I'm using the first finger, the second finger, and the third finger. So that's that funky, bluesy chord. G, F, and B. 15th fret E string, 15th fret D string, 16th fret on the G string. Okay, so that's the first thing to do, is to get down that chord. And then what you can do is take the top 2 notes there, the F and the B, keep them up this end, and then just take that G down here. So you put the root note down here. So that gives us a chord. And you can play it however you want. Okay, so that's a pretty simple way of tapping, because the thing is, if you when you start tapping, if you simply go into doing all that stuff, you're going to be doing a lot of hammer-ons, and it's going to be a little bit fast, let's say, and a little busy. Whereas with a chord, you can just knock it out like that. So you just basically tap in and hammering on down here. So in terms of this hand, I'm just taking that index finger and bong, just pressing down, So it takes a little bit of pressure, but not too much. You don't have to, you don't have to really whack. Just get used to just pressing down. Now, one of the things that might happen is that you might get a little bit of residual noise from the other strings, especially when you're taking the finger off. So you'll probably start using these other fingers, like the pinky, to actually try and hold down some of the other strings to stop all of that noise. In terms of this hand, again, it's just a case of tapping down there. So remember, I'm taking the F and the B, so it's the 15th fret D string, 16th fret on the G string. So, just those two fingers, and I just go bong. Now notice what I'm doing with the thumb. This is a Billy Sheehan trick. It's not really a trick, it's just a method. But he generally puts his thumb on the side of the fretboard. And Billy Sheehan was one of my first huge heroes. And, I watched everything by him, learned everything by him, and I had his instructional videos and everything. And the one thing he always talked about was that using that thumb on the side of the neck as pretty much like you would with finger picking. As you're finger picking, it keeps you locked down, anchored, and you know where you are. So keep your bearings a lot better. So by putting the thumb there, instead of hovering like this and being unstable, if you put the thumb there, you've got a bit more stability. Like there, I've got the thumb there, and I'm actually pulling it back a little bit so that the thumb's almost coming into the body, just so that I'm nicely locked in. So they're the two things to get down first. Just that nice. Look what I'm doing with this hand as well, with the pinky. I'm sort of holding the hand across, and then I'm just bringing that finger down. You don't have to keep it locked down or anything, but as I'm bringing that finger down, I'm trying to stop any kind of residual noise on those other strings. So just get used to that, and then get used to that separate, and then put them together. Now, the other thing worth mentioning is, remember what I said about this chord up here? I took the 5th out, okay, which would have been the D. So I've taken this D away. So now I can actually put it down here at the 5th fret of the A string to create little bass line kind of things. So you can start making little bass line figures up with this hand, and this is where you can get used to playing bass figures with one hand only, and that's going to build up the strength in that hand. And, it's good for your all-round technique. And I'll tell you, one of the things that has really helped me over the years, especially with doing reading gigs, actually, is that if you can learn to play just with one hand, when you've got to turn the page, it becomes really, really easy, because you're able to play. I mean, you wouldn't want to play the whole bass line with one hand, because it's going to be a little bit too percussive. If you're playing like this, you're going to get this percussive part. But if you've got to turn pages, you can actually, you've got a hand free. So that's pretty handy. Or if you've got something wrong with the amp, I mean, number of times that my amp's been, intermittent problems, the things started going wrong, it's it's turning off, it's distorting. And I just start playing with that hand, and I just go over and I can mess about with the lead, I can turn it on and off, do all kinds of things, because I'm just playing with this hand. So it frees up a hand, which in a live situation can be an absolute godsend. So that is that's a cool thing to practice. So all I'm doing here is I'm just playing with that G and that D down here, 3rd fret E string, 5th fret on the A string, and I'm just using that chord up at the top just to fill it out. So it's that's just a cool little way of distributing the notes of these chords around the neck to give you that to give you something to tap, And like I've said, this stuff isn't going to be, you're not going to be learning songs that are like this unless you're playing Primus tunes and God knows what else. It's you know, in a standard, if you're playing in a soul band or a disco band or an Elvis tribute band, you ain't going to be doing this. I mean, you can. I mean, there are times when I've been finishing a tune and then at the end, let's say that it was, I don't know, let's say it was in G and it's like, you know, you could put that chord in. Just as a, you know, just as a little bit of silly thing to do. I mean, if you're playing in an orchestra, you probably won't want to do that. And if you're playing with some, you know, pretty dictatorial band leader that wants you to play exactly what's written, then, you know, stay away. You know, you do that and you're going to get kicked out. But you know, just as a little bit of a thing to do, it can be quite cool. So that's how you can distribute chords around. Now, if I was playing that, I could shift chords. So remember, we just played with the G. So now let's have a look at C7. So a standard C7 voicing is going to be that. So it's the same chord, but we're just taking it up to C. But this is starting on the A string. So this is A, D, and G string. So what I'm playing here is root, 3rd, and 7th. So C, 15th fret of the A string, E, 14th fret of the D string, and then the B flat at the 15th fret of the G string. Okay, so we've gone from this chord, G7 to C7. So if you learn your chords, oops, you can start moving those bass notes down here. So with that C, remember, we can take the top 2 notes there, and this time it's E and B flat. So this is 14th fret D string, 15th fret on the G string, but we take the C down to the 3rd fret of the A string. So we've gone from this chord to this chord. Okay, so the cool thing about this is that we've hardly moved with the chord. So, sorry, the tapped voicing. So we've gone from F to B, so 15th fret D string, 16th fret G string, and we're just taking the whole thing down 1 fret to there, E and B flat. So same thing, just 1 fret down. So we hardly have to move in this hand. So that C there, with the bass line, I'm using root 5th like this. So C, 3rd fret of the A string, and G at the 5th fret of the E string. So it's all about getting some kind of independence and getting a little bit of, it's not strength per se, it's more, it's not even dexterity, it's just technique. Because you don't want it to be all messy. So it's about getting a nice clean hit. Now, bear in mind, I've not been tapping for years and years and years. I used to tap all the time in the 90s, you know, when I, you know, like I said, I was into Stu Ham and Billy Sheehan and Victor, well, not Victor Wooten so much, but those guys, I was just obsessed. So I used to spend all my time tapping. But probably, I mean, that was in the early 90s to mid 90s that I did most of it. Past 20 years, maybe. I don't really. It's just something that comes up every now and then. It's for videos for this mainly. So I might not have the chops for it that I once did. But one of the things that I would have always practiced would be getting a nice clean hit without any residual noise. So, I mean, I'm still getting a bit of residual noise there every now and then. See, I'm using the other fingers to kind of try and to stop that noise. So it's just getting used to root and 5th in this hand, and then those two chords up at the top. So pretty straightforward. And like I say, it's in terms of the technique. Yes, there's all that trying to get used to the residual noise and all that stuff. But really, we're just pressing down. I mean, it couldn't be any easier. I mean, it's actually easier. What is that noise? Oh, it's bottles of water falling over. It's actually easier than finger picking in some ways, because with finger picking, you've got to have coordination between the hands. Whereas with this hand, you're just pressing down. And obviously with this one, I mean, you know, to do that, you've got to start thinking of both hands in, you know, the way that they move. But I mean, all I'm basically doing is thinking. I'm thinking of low note, then tap, so, and then the fifth. So you're thinking about one and then the other. It's mainly independence in the way that you would, in the same way that you would with piano. That you kind of think of it in a more linear fashion rather than both at the same time. So I'm not really thinking of the bass line as one separate thing and then the chord as one separate thing. I'm thinking of the combination of the two, a bit like when you learn polyrhythms. You know, you. So I'm thinking that hand, then this hand, then that hand. So. See what I mean? I'm playing that hand, then that hand. So that hand, then that. So, I mean, there's a million and one things you could do with that. And then move around, so. So in learning chords, so if you learn those chords, it's really easy to do this because you're just taking that bass note and you're just putting it down here, and then you're just keeping the D and the G string. So if you know the voicing, you just think of that, and then that, you just take that finger off, you see that. For a D7, I'll just take that D off. So there's not that much to it. Another thing you could obviously do is take chords like major sevens and minor sevens as well. So if I was to look at something like a C major, a 1-6-2-5, C major 7, A minor 7, D minor 7, G7. So which up here would be that old chestnut that I use as an example all the time. So you can take a chord like that, so the C major 7, here I've got C, E, and B, so 15th fret A string, 14th fret on the D string, and then the 16th fret on the G string. So that's basically a perfect fifth up at the top. See, on its own, it's just a fifth. I'm playing that with the first and third fingers. Look, I've got the thumb there anchored. But then you put the C on the bottom and you've got that bittersweet, nice major 7 chord. And then you could play A minor 7, so that's just 17th fret. So 17th fret, E string, D string, and G string. Okay, so that's the A, the G, and then the C up on the top. So I'm just taking that fourth there, so it's the 17th fret on the D string and G string, and the A down at the 5th fret of the E string. So hold on. It's overloading the amp a little bit. Mixer, I mean. So C major 7, and then for the D minor 7, we would normally have that D, F, and C. So that's going to be 17th fret A string, 15th fret on the D string, and 17th fret on the G string. Simple little chord. So we take the top two notes. Again, it's that little perfect fifth there. First and third fingers. Index and ring. Put the D on the bottom. And then G7, which is the one we just played, which gives us that. So when we put those together, okay, so you get these nice little can just take chord progressions and then just distribute them. And there's a million and one things. I'm trying to keep it really, really straightforward here, but you can move them around as you want. So that's just a 1-6-2-5. Okay, and there I'm playing root fifth down the bottom. If you know a fifth pattern. Because I've taken the fifth out up here. Okay, so that's what I'd call maybe pianistic tapping. And by the way, I know there's a lot of comments. I'll get to that in a minute. So what else was I going to talk about? Oh yeah, so we've got the basic pianistic type tapping that you'll see by guys like Stu Ham, Victor Wooten, and then you've got the more what I might call linear tapping, where it's more hammer-on based. So this is the kind of stuff where, that was influenced heavily by guys like Eddie Van Halen. He didn't invent it. I mean, if you look back, there's like flamenco guitarists that did it years and years ago, 1950s, that were doing all the stuff that Eddie Van Halen did, and more, actually. But Steve Hackett, he did a lot of tapping with, well, not a lot, but he did tapping with Genesis, especially Supper's Ready and a few things off Nursery Crime. And then you've got Brian May, who did quite a bit of tapping. There's a bunch of guys that have done tapping. But the main idea behind that, I mean, obviously, you've got the typical... the typical eruption thing. That's probably the easiest one that you can do. So if we were going to do that, let's say we do it let's make it easy. Let's take this is basically an arpeggio. So we're basically outlining an arpeggio. So let's take a D minor. So this is going to be the notes D, F, and A. So it's going to be 7th fret, 10th fret, and 14th frets on the G string. So we're going to be, first of all, we're going to put the fingers there. Okay, so I'll put the first finger there, the index finger, at the 7th fret of the G string. So I'm going to hold that down. Then I'm going to tap with the index finger at the 14th fret of the G string. So that's the A. So we tap it, and then we just let it pull off. Basically, in the same way that you would finger picking with rest stroke. So you tap it down, let it roll off, and I'm letting it come to rest on the D string. Okay, and another Billy Sheehan little trick is I'm putting that second finger up on top of the first finger. I've always done that because that was just how I learned from watching him. So he puts his middle finger on top of the index finger to give it a little bit more beef. So you pull off, and then you just hammer on with the pinky at the F, which is the 10th fret. So. And so you start out really, really slow. Don't rush it too much. Make sure you get in 3 very well-defined notes, and then just gradually build up speed. Even if you can only get that quick at first. And then as you build up speed, as you change the dynamics, you kind of get that phasing effect that you hear on Eruption. And then you can just move the hand, so you take... Oops. So there I just took that finger up 1 fret to the B flat. And then I've taken the whole of that hand up a whole step, and then that up a whole step. That's the basic idea behind the typical Eddie Van Halen style tapping, and that's the easiest one. It's, I was doing that from probably the first day that I started playing. The first thing I did is like, how do you tap? Most useless thing that I could have probably done on my first few lessons, but I was desperate to kind of do what all the guitarists were doing. Turn it into a sus2. It's basically an arpeggio. And because that, you know, that was a D minor, you can just outline any kind of arpeggio. So if I was to take that, and instead of the F at the 10th fret, I play the F sharp at the 11th fret, which is a bit of a bigger stretch, you get a major arpeggio. Like I said, you could just use the 9th fret there for a sus2 kind of chord. You could do that for a sus4. But basically, when you get those kind of things, you can just... Oops. Where am I? Oh, I'm on E. So... you can just outline chord progressions with it. Hands starting to ache a little bit just playing through on that. So you can just outline arpeggios. That's all that is, right? But as well as doing those kind of arpeggio kind of patterns, you can also just create kind of linear lines. So basically what happens is this hand just becomes a replacement for one of the fingers on this side. So if you were to take something like a I don't know, like a minor scale, instead of playing it like that, you know, first finger, third finger, fourth finger, first finger, third finger, fourth finger, first finger, third finger, you can bring this hand into play to whip up the across the fretboard a lot quicker. So you can just use it in place of another finger on this hand. So if you're coming, you know, you're doing something like... So instead of going... Oh. Well, I can't even do it. You know. That one's quite tricky, actually. That's just a consequence of that pattern. But you get the idea. I'm just playing that. You basically just... Actually, I'll show you what that actual line... So that, I've got the first finger at the G. That's the 12th fret of the G string. I've got that held down. Then this time, I'm tapping the B flat at the 15th fret of the G string, pulling off to that G, then I'm hammering on with the third finger at the 14th fret. So that's the first part. And then I'm tapping again at the 15th fret. So, and then pulling off down through them. So 15th, 14th, 12th. So round and round. Just build up speed. Yeah. And you can just move that through scales and lines and whatever. I mean, the popular one that I've already done, I think, on a video before is "Addicted to That Rush" by Billy Sheehan, where he's actually trilling on one note, basically. Well, between two notes, it's just a trill. But you're just playing, so that's just the 12th fret and the, 14th fret and 12th fret. So I'm tapping at the 14th fret, pulling off to the 12th fret, hammering on at the 14th fret, pulling off to the 12th fret. And you're just alternating between that hand and that hand. So tap, pull off, hammer, pull off, tap, pull off, hammer, pull off. Just between those two notes to give you that trill. Which is the beginning of Addicted to That Rush, etc. So that's more linear tapping. That's you know, that's just the basics of that. Just playing arpeggio patterns, playing scalar lines, things like that. And then finally, one of the other things that you can do is actually do arpeggios across strings. So one that we could have a look at is, let's say we take a C major arpeggio. Okay, so what we're going to do is take, so this is going to be C, E, and G. So if I took a C major here, so just 10th fret on the D string, 9th and 12th frets on the G string. So that's a C major arpeggio. We can actually tap the octave of the C here. So, Okay, so what I'm going to do is hammer on with this hand. So I'm going to just hammer on out of nowhere for the C and then for the E. So those two are just being hammered. And then I'm hammering on with the fourth finger. So second finger, first finger, fourth finger. And then I tap at the top. Then I pull off back down through those notes on the G string, and we're back where we started. So that's just a really simple way of playing up and down through a major arpeggio across two strings. Just working down the neck. So that's just a really simple way of doing arpeggios like that. And then if you were going to work up through them, you could start up down at the bottom. Oops. Got to make sure you get the right notes. So I won't go too far down that road because it's we get into it gets a little bit trickier. But you get the idea. So we're basically just bringing this hand into play so that we don't have to play it like that. We can just play it more legato. Put a slide at the top if you want. And the cool thing about that is that you can then actually you can actually start outlining the other chord tones. So C major, major 7, A, so it's a major 6, back to 7. Okay, so it's, you know, just moving this hand around. That hand stays the same. But then I'm playing the 17th fret, then the 16th fret, then the 14th fret, and then just coming back up. So it's pretty much Vidor staccato there. So again, just basic ideas for things that you can do with it, and obviously you can go nuts with this stuff and start doing all kinds of things, but that's just some of the basics. So basically what we looked at was take a chord, any of those things, create a bass line down in this hand, or take the root note down here, and then you can move through chord progressions. Okay, so you've got chords like that, you've got chords like this. Sorry. Maybe put in the 5th in there. Oops. That's the problem. That's the problem right there. So when you use the 1st and 3rd fingers for it, you got to be a little bit more accurate. Otherwise, you get that. Okay, so that gets a little bit more tricky. But so it's basically chords, which I think are the easier of the ones for beginners, and then you've got arpeggios, and then you've got lines, and what was the other one? Oh yeah, you can do arpeggios across. So yeah, all of that's pretty straightforward stuff. It's I know that it can sound hard because it's you know blah, 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 blah. It's really quick, but it's not. It's actually, once you've got the hand strength up in this hand, it's actually quite easy. And the cool thing is that when you start doing chords like this, you actually start to learn a little bit more about voicings and how bass lines, you know, operate under chords. You know, like knowing that that C, that we've got the 3rd and the 7th up in the top. You know, you start to see voicings in a different way. So you know, and you can start to make solo pieces and all kinds of things. So yeah, so that's just a few little basics on it. And out of that as well, remember the little tips that I gave. So, you know, you want to be careful down here with residual noise. It's just a case of pressing down, not too hard. Get that thumb in the back. Just get used to doing basic things like that. And on the top here, use that thumb as an anchor so that you're anchored there, nice and so. and then maybe put that middle finger over the index finger, Billy Sheehan style, for a little bit of added oomph and a bit of beef. Okay, so yeah, I'll leave the. That's it for tapping for today. So hopefully that helped a little bit. So if you've got any questions about that stuff, because I know that I've just gone blah, 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 blah for 45 minutes, 50 minutes without having a break. And so it'll be good to see if you've got any questions about that, because I'm pretty sure that some of you will be thinking, hold on, it doesn't seem to make the right noise when I do it. So yeah, let's see what we've got. Okay, so, and also remember, any of you that weren't here at the start, I've got the interview with Charles Beartooth coming up on Wednesday, who does a lot of this stuff on his lovely LaFay bass. So, yeah, so I'll be doing that. That'll be coming out on Wednesday. Okay. I'm new to tapping. This is Aditya Tyagi, is that right? I'm new to tapping, so do you think it's a good idea to practice tapping the index and middle fingers independently on the 14th and 15th frets respectively before practicing both fingers simultaneously? Oh, you mean like this? Oops. Not really. I think it's probably just as useful to, in fact, it's easier to play it like that, you know. That's easier than... So I think playing it as a full chord is actually easier. I think that's actually easier. Sounds very Les Claypool. Yeah, Les Claypool does quite a bit of that kind of stuff. Yeah, and he plays a lot of tritone intervals, yeah. Oh, actually, look, the things are starting to look a bit cooler in here. Now I've got with the light. Okay, so things are starting to look a bit better. In fact, I actually need to turn the lights up on the in front. This is what it's going to look like when I get the nice tent over the top. I always find how hard you have to tap difficult to gauge. Just don't hit too hard. Just enough to get a decent tone. I mean, there is a lot going on in that hand, actually, in terms of muting and getting things out of the way. It's just quite subtle, but that comes with time. When you first try it, it's just going to be all over the place. You know, you're not going to be paying attention to the residual noise. You're just going to be trying to get the notes. Yeah. Hello from Anaheim. Hi, Ben. Have you been to NAMM? I'd have liked to have been there at the moment. That would have been cool. I'll tell you what I'm going to need to do. I'm going to have to get more lights for when I do this. I'm going to have a light over this side as well. I have actually got a light there, but I've not turned it on yet because I've ran out of four ways. Starting at 0, how long would it take for me to sound like Thundercat? I don't know. It depends how much you practice. I mean, if you don't practice that much, then you'd never get there. I mean, it just all depends on how much time you practice. You know, there's a lot that goes into that. It depends what you practice. You know, the problem that a lot of people have is that they listen to what that person's playing and then they practice that stuff, but then they miss out on all the stuff that person practiced. Because that person will be the sum. So Thundercat is the sum total of all the things that he's practiced and played in gigs and da-da-da-da-da. And just by listening to what he plays isn't going to amount to that. You might be able to mimic, but you're not going to have the actual knowledge that went into that. It's like when people talk about reading and things like that. You know, a lot of guys and gals, they might have learned to read. They might have gone through a whole load of stuff with double bass. They might have been at music college and studied harmony to a high level. There's a lot of stuff that can go into any one person. I mean, they might not do that, but you have to kind of look at how they learned rather than just listening to what they play, because you're more likely to get to that point by doing what they did rather than actually just imitating what they played. Because you might be a mimic, but you wouldn't have the facility, the mental facility, you know, the actual knowledge. Because it all is one big thing. I mean, to sound like Thundercat, it could take a year. I mean, you could get the same tone, you could practice the lines and get the lines down, but to actually have his ability all round, you're probably looking at the amount of years that he's been playing, you know. How long have I been playing? 33 years. Started in 1990, so... and if you'd have stopped me at any one point... I mean, there's things that I can do now that I certainly wouldn't have been able to do 10 years in, you know, back in 2000. Ignore technique. You can get technique in no time. That's not... You shouldn't really be focusing on technique anymore. Well, I mean, focus on it for a while, you know. But that's not really what you should be aiming at. Technically, I could do a lot of the stuff that I would do now. I'm not amazing, but, like, you know, a lot of the more technical things that I might do, like tapping or slapping or whatever, I probably got all that down within about 2 or 3 years. You know, all you've got to do is look at some kids that can do that kind of stuff and they get there. But all the rest of it, the kind of bandsmanship, the musicianship, the harmony knowledge, the experience, that's what you get over over those other years. And, you know, I don't think that you can really get to a really high standard in any less than 10 years. I mean, because there's certain elements in there, especially the experience side of things. And, you know, technically, yes, like I say, but in terms of your musicianship, then no. There's a lot to work through. Good day, listening from the Philippines. Hello. Salamat. What does the action need to be set to get a good tapping sound? Oh, anything, but I mean, hopefully lower than not. I mean, if you've got a really high action, it can be a pain. This isn't a very low action. It's not a very high action. It's very, very middle of the road. The one thing that you will get when it's quite high is that you'll get more of that, you know, that what I was talking about earlier, the difference between that and that. The lower it is, the less of that string rattle you'll get. But, you know, if you modify your action so that you can just tap all the time, it's going to have a knock-on effect with your finger picking or your pick playing, because you're not going to be able to pick as hard. And I don't mean hard. I just mean that everything that you pick is going to be like, it's all going to fret out. Big crowd this year. Ah, cool. Got the Scales course last Tuesday. Love it. Oh, that's good. That's Scale Essentials course. Do you think pick playing skill is as essential as finger picking? Not really. I mean, it depends what you want to do. I finger pick more than pick, you know, than using a plectrum. But I always find that it's, you know, I used to be kind of against playing with a pick, you know, when I was younger, because I was an idiot, basically. But, you know, as you go on, I think you realize that it's just about a different tone, you know, so that, you know, the tone you get from a pick, you ain't going to get from your fingers. You can do a pretty good impression. Brian Bella talks about that a lot, but, you know, just use a pick. You know, if you want the sound of a pick, it's like if you want to slap, if you want that sound, yeah, you could probably get that sound by picking really hard with a plectrum, but why would you bother? When you can just slap, you know. How useful slap? Depends if you need to slap. How useful's pick playing? Well, it depends whether you want to do any pick playing. If you want to be a professional musician, you want to be able to get any gig going, then I would say that you probably want to practice your pick playing for a little bit. At least get to a if you're a full on finger pick player, it's handy to be able to play with a pick. Not always. I mean, if you just finger pick, I mean, then that's fine. But every now and then it might be that a certain gig, a certain recording session or whatever is going to call for a pick because that's the tone that you're going for. It depends whether you want to be more niche driven, whether you want to be have a particular sound and be more of an artist in that sense, or whether you want to be a jack of all trades, a journeyman, all-round professional that can fit into any kind of situation. If you want to do that, then you obviously need to get a lot of different things down. But, there's no reason for Jeff Berlin to start playing with a pick or Billy Sheehan or any of those kind of people because they are known for what they do. So it depends which way you want to go. I always wanted to be a professional musician regardless. I wanted to be a rock star when I first started, first 5 years or so. But then eventually, I thought, well, I want to do this for a living for the rest of my life. And so that's where going to music college and doing all of that stuff that I did came into play. And I wanted to learn how to do pretty much all styles. So it depends what you want to do. None of it's right or wrong. Do you like that foam muted sound? Yeah, I mean, where is it? I've got my Nordy mute, which probably won't work that well on here. It's better on flat wounds. So you get that kind of, let's take the treble down a bit. So you get that. So there, can you see I've put the Nordy mute on? So you can use foam, whatever it is. I know that there's people saying, oh, no, you don't want to use that, or you don't want to use this, or you don't want to do that, and whatever. It's like, whatever gets you that tone. So that gives you... It gives you that kind of thudding. Probably doesn't come out that well if you're on a mobile device. You probably can't even hear that. But if you've got decent speakers, it'll sound pretty cool. Do you recommend those Gripmaster types of devices to strengthen fingers? No. Jeff Berlin's got a real bee in his bonnet about those. No, I don't. Because it's not really your finger strength that actually makes that much of a difference. It's more the actual dexterity of them. You don't really want strong fingers necessarily. It's more about technique, to be honest. No, I did have one back in the 90s, when they first came out. I mean, they were out when I first started playing, so maybe it was the late 80s. I started in 90, and I got one fairly early on because I thought, I was all about strength of the fingers. Did it change anything for me? No, didn't change anything, And I was using it quite a bit at first, but all you do is you hurt your fingers. It's like your little finger. You just and if you're not careful, you can damage your tendons. So no, I don't like them at all. Right, I'll be getting off in a second because I'm babysitting tonight. My wife's got a gig, a fairly big gig, and I've got to get back for the kids. And I've not eaten all day as well. I'm actually using a Diodario finger flex exercise right now. Really helps with the pinky flexibility. Oh, okay, so you're having some fun with it. I never found it did anything. You seen DS joke out that dude in New Orleans street brawl last night? No, I've not. He also got in a fight at a boxing match earlier that day. Right, all right. So he's on one then. No, I've not. I'll have to check that out. Do you have any suggestions for trying to learn several instruments at the same time? I'm learning bass and guitar and piano, but I don't know how to schedule my rehearsals. Not really. I mean, I always find that you're better off to be quite specific with one particular thing. Focus on something. It doesn't have to be a particular instrument necessarily, but so like when I was learning to read at first, I put all my eggs in that basket. I was, to the detriment of every other part of my playing, and you kind of have to do that to really make some headway on any one thing. So like when I was slapping, all I was doing was slapping. When I started tapping, all I was doing was tapping. Any one thing that you're wanting to get into, especially at the start, I would put everything into that. So if you want to learn piano, I would, spend a full... Don't go guitar, bass, piano in one evening. Maybe spend a full week of just playing piano. That's what works for me. I find that focused practice is way better than spreading yourself thin. I know that Steve Vai's got had that practice routine that he talked about at Berkeley. It was his 12-hour practice thing, and he was working through these arpeggios and these scales and speed picking and blah, 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 blah. But, I just find it much more productive if you spend more time on one particular thing. Would you consider doing a video on common injuries and how to avoid them? I've already done one about my back, because just in case anybody doesn't know, I've lost 2 inches in height. I was 5'11.5". I'm now 5'9.5", from playing this damn thing. So it was actually this bass that did it. I was playing it like a lot, let's say. So that was the cruise thing. I was playing this minimum 5 hours a day on stage, and then maximum 7 days a week, 9 months out of the year for about quite a few years, 10 years in all. But after a few years, maybe 4 or 5 years of that, so 9 months of that every single day, it just took this shoulder completely out of the game, and my back just bent out of shape really badly. So I had to have physio and that for quite a while. So yeah, heavy bass. This is a heavy bass, and I have played Marcus Miller signature editions that aren't as heavy. It completely depends on which, but you can have a Fender Jazz the same year, same everything, can be really heavy or really light. It just changes depending on the factory. Just as they put them out. Maybe not by many pounds, but, these things are pretty heavy. And so it's about 12 pounds that I've got, and that hangy around my neck, 5 to 7 hours every day for 9 months out of the year. Eventually, something's going to give. So I've done a video about that on Talking Bass. I can't remember what it's called. You have to look up back. Talking Bass back. I'm sure that'll get you there. But yeah, I'd probably talk, and I've had tendon problems down here before, so yeah, I might do another one on injuries. Might you're a lord, just so you know. Yes, I think I might be. I'm sure that my missus bought me a title for my birthday once. I think I'm lord of somewhere in Scotland. I think I am. I think I'm a lord. Yeah. Charles Widmore, and that the dude I've lost. Just got here and it's almost over. Are you going to do a discount on your course books anytime soon? There's 25% discount off right now. So but it finishes tomorrow. So we've got a sale on. It finishes tomorrow. So if you want to get any of that stuff, then get on over there. Right, last few, because I got to get going. Played for 3 fingers for 30 years because I thought that was Steve Harris's technique. Turns out he only uses 2. Yeah, I know. Do you have any recommendations for posture to prevent that? Not really. And when I talked to a doctor about it, he said sitting, because I always thought sitting down would be the solution, but it's not. Apparently sitting down can actually be worse, because if you sat down, unless you are absolutely perfect posture with your back, the temptation, because of the weight pushing you forward, is to actually bend a little bit, and it's actually worse for your back because of the position you end up in. I can feel it right now in my lats. Yeah, I mean, I was all right until I got into my mid-30s. I think, how old was I? I'm 48 now. So I was 30... it was 2006 when it started to hurt quite a bit. It hurt my shoulder so much that, you know, all that tapping thing I was talking about earlier on, the hammer-ons? I was actually holding the bass like this to take the weight off the shoulder and just playing bass lines hammer-on because it was so bad. And so that was, about 2005, 2006. So what was that? 30 then, 31. And it got worse and worse and worse until about 2000. When did I get it seen to? So I'd have been about 37, 2012, about 37, I think, when I started to get it. No, it was later than that. I think it was about 2013 when I started talking bass. I think that's when I got my back fixed. So I'd have been about 38. Yeah. That's the one. The video you made on the lower back cobra stretch did wonders for me. That's what I was using. And the good old Mackenzie rolls. Thanks, everybody, for all the nice comments. But the tone's worth the back strain. No, it ain't. You know, now I completely regret having that. You know, there's a lot of things I don't regret too much, but man, I regret using this all the time. I should have got a lighter instrument for that kind of gig. If you're only doing 2 or 3 gigs a week, you know, doing 2 sets a night, just basic stuff like that, then you're probably not going to have problems. But man, when you're doing 5 to 7 sets every single day for 9 months out of the year, just non-stop, no nights off, it starts to really wear on you after a while. You can imagine just after a week of doing it every single day and moving the gear around, because I know it was on a ship but we were moving the gear around as well. I used to take my amp on and I had this massive rack system that I had that weighed a ton. And I had an Ampeg stack as well. So it was blooming terrible. Cool. All right then, everybody. So I'll get moving, and it's been lovely to see everybody. I don't really see you, do I? But hope you like this new little look that I'm going for. I'm going to have like a big tent thing over here so it gets completely blacked out, and then I'll be able to just get the lights where there's a light there as well. So I'll have that, and I might put like some ambient lighting behind this. I've got the basses behind me. You can't see. Look, I've actually got some basses there. So this should be pretty funky. So and because, like I say, I'm going to do live streams every week from now on. So I'm going to try and get the whole thing done. I might even put the SLR there instead of this naff webcam. I mean, it's all right. It's a Logitech, but it's better with a digital SLR. And I might actually get proper lights in here rather than these things I've got here. Try to make it decent. So remember that the final day of the sale tomorrow. So it's 25% discount. It's the spring sale, so that finishes tomorrow. We've got the Charles Bear 2 interview coming up on Wednesday, and the following Wednesday we'll have Josh Fosgreen from Bass Buzz. I've got a nice interview with him as well. So hopefully you'll all enjoy that. And I will see you all hopefully next week. See you later.